You probably are familiar with the recent announcement from the Social Security Fairness Act that President Biden signed into law before exiting office that changes the benefits that over 3 million people will receive who are retired teachers, retired state workers, and retirement government workers who were otherwise either not eligible for a spousal Social Security benefit or survivor benefit, or were receiving a reduced benefit due to their own work history. So I want to give you an update in this episode as far as a recent announcement that Social Security made regarding when you will receive those payments. Also talk about a few examples of how that works, and then wrap up with how these benefits will potentially be taxed. So I'm Ryan Morrissey, retirement specialist and certified financial planner. If you like this channel, please subscribe below, and look forward to discussing this information with you in this episode. Welcome back. This is episode 243. There's been some recent news about the Social Security Fairness Act that came out this week. And if you remember in episode 236, I talked about the Social Security Fairness Act that was signed into law by President Biden just before he left office. Now, this bill will increase Social Security payments for millions of teachers, former public employees, and people that were not otherwise eligible for Social Security benefits due to not paying into Social Security because they were exempt from paying into it. So that's a big benefit to many people. But Social Security has announced more information about when people will expect to receive payments from this. So I want to discuss that in this episode, as well as go over a few examples of how the Social Security Fairness Act could impact you, and talk about how these benefits will potentially be taxed. Now, if you're someone who's looking to plan the ideal retirement, I have good news for you. Retirement Readiness Review classes are back in session. If you want to learn more about planning your ideal retirement, then consider attending one of my in-person retirement planning workshops. If you live in Connecticut, classes are beginning in March, and they will be taking place in Wallingford and in Middletown. And this Retirement Readiness Review course is a 2-night comprehensive course that I put together a number of years ago to really help educate you on many of the things that you need to be aware of and understand as you're planning the ideal retirement. So to learn more, head over to retirewithryan.com and click on courses to find out information about the course, as well as information about registering. Now, obviously, if you are a listener or a watcher and you aren't local to where I am in Connecticut, I have some even better news for you, and that is that this same information is available online through an on-demand course. You can also find out information about that by going to retirewithryan.com and clicking on courses. So as I mentioned earlier, the Social Security Fairness Act was signed into law of January of this year. And I talked about it on episode 236, but there's a recent press release that the Social Security Administration made, and that's what I want to start talking about this week. So here's the press release, and I'll put a link in it to the show notes. If you're listening or if you're watching, you can see it below on YouTube. But Social Security, when they first were announcing the Social Security Fairness Act, it was expected that it would take most people up to a year to receive a change in benefits and also to receive retroactive benefits. If you remember, this act states that benefits are paid retroactive back to January 1 of 2024. So that means that a lot of people who are eligible for this are not only going to get benefits going forward, but are also going to get a lump sum payment of benefits going back to January 1st, 2024. But it was initially expected it could take up to a year to get benefits. However, this press release was just announced this week, and it says that Social Security is aggressively starting to issue retroactive payments in February and increase monthly benefits beginning in April in support of President Trump's priority to implement the Social Security Fairness Act as quickly as possible. And the agency's original estimate of taking a year or more will now only apply to complex cases that cannot be processed by automation. So this is a big benefit to not only know you're going to get this, but know that it will be coming sooner this year. And it also says here that any changes in benefits are to begin in April, depending on the different factors. And if you are eligible for benefits, to not reach out to Social Security until April, so it gives them some time to actually be able to process these benefits. So that's great news for many people. That means that you're not going to have to wait a year, and it'll be relatively soon to receive retroactive payments as well as to get any changes in those benefits. The way that this works is that if you were someone who was exempt from paying into Social Security wages due to being a teacher, a firefighter, a state worker, federal, and some federal employees, though it's really not been for a long time that it's been the case, but you were exempt from paying into Social Security, and therefore you were collecting a pension that was exempt from Social Security wages, you were getting a reduced benefit through either a spousal or survivor benefit, and that was called the government pension offset, or on your own benefit due to the windfall elimination provision. So this was reducing Social Security benefits. It's estimated initially, they said 2.8 million people. Now they're saying 3.2 million people. So it's a lot of people. It also impacts where I'm located in Connecticut. There are, I think, 14 states where teachers are exempt from paying into Social Security. So in Connecticut, that's the case. So many Connecticut teachers, including my mom, who was a retired Connecticut teacher, was getting a very minimal Social Security benefit due to this change. So the good news, as we talked about, it's retroactive to January 1, 2024. And it could be, if it's your own benefit, it could end up giving you an additional $500 plus a month because that's how much the windfall elimination provision was reducing your benefit by. So that's part of what's being repealed. But as the government pension offset, the benefit could be significant. It could be $1,000. It could be thousands of dollars of additional money that you'll be getting. So let me just run through a couple examples here. So let's first talk about how the spousal benefit works for somebody that's impacted by the government pension offset. So we have an example here of Jim and Judy. They're both 70. Jim is a retired salesman and Judy's a retired Connecticut elementary school teacher. Now Jim is receiving $3,100 per month from his Social Security retirement benefit. And Judy's a retired school teacher, as I mentioned, who taught for 30 years and is now receiving $4,200 per month from her Connecticut teacher's retirement pension. She didn't work in any other jobs, so she doesn't have a Social Security earnings history because as a Connecticut teacher, as I mentioned, she's exempt from paying into Social Security. So before the Social Security Fairness Act, Judy was receiving $0 from Social Security because she didn't have her own work history, so therefore she couldn't collect off her own work history. So the next thing she would be eligible for is for a spousal benefit. But due to the government pension offset, she was not getting a spousal benefit because it was reduced due to the way that's calculated. And again, for more on that, you can go back and check out that episode. But again, the good news is that it's being eliminated, so you don't even need to know, exactly how it was done. So the way that it works now is that Social Security is going to have to calculate what Judy is eligible for as a spousal benefit based off what Jim was eligible to receive at his full retirement benefit. Now, I said earlier, Jim is 70 years old and he's getting $3,100. So as a spousal benefit, you're eligible to get at least half of your spouse's benefit if you don't have your own benefit, which is greater, which in this case, that is true for Judy because she doesn't have her own benefit. So you would think initially Judy would get half of $3,100, but the spousal benefit is half of your spouse's full retirement benefit. Because Jim is now 70, his full retirement benefit, assuming he's 70, he was born in 1955, would have been 66 in 2 months. So Social Security is going to go back to see what Jim was eligible for at 66 in 2 months. Now, if you're trying to do this on your own, this is difficult because once you go on Social Security, you no longer get statements that give you all this information showing what your benefit amounts were at different ages. So unless you kept your statement, you'd kind of have to back into that number. So how is Social Security going to do that? Well, they have the records, but if you wanted to do this on your own, assuming Jim's Social Security benefit is $3,100, we would then now need to go and look at what the Social Security cost of living adjustments have been since Jim was collecting his benefit. So Social Security has this information online. I've gone online and we can see what the annual cost of living adjustments have been. Scroll down to the bottom here, going back. So assuming Jim started collecting his benefit, let's say 3 years ago, we can see what the Social Security cost of living adjustments have been for the last 3 years. This year was 2.5%. 2024 was 3.2%. In 2023, it was one of the biggest ever at 8.7%. So that's roughly 15%. So if we take Jim's Social Security benefit of $3,100 and we reduce it by 15%, that gives us about $2,600. So let's assume that's what Jim was eligible for at his full retirement, $2,600. So that's what Judy will be eligible to receive, half of Jim's full retirement benefit, which was $2,600 was the number. So half of that is $1,300. So that's what Judy should be eligible for. So Judy, sometime soon, will be eligible to receive $1,300 in monthly benefits, and then she'll also be eligible for a retroactive payment going all the way back to January 1 of 2024. So she's going to get roughly 14 months, 15 months of payments in a lump sum. So that is a real win for anyone that is eligible for a spousal benefit. So that's definitely one of the biggest benefits that you could get if you are someone who had a very limited work history and you were not eligible for a spousal benefit because you're getting a pension that was exempt from Social Security wages and your spouse is collecting their Social Security benefit, then you could be eligible for half of their benefit, which could be a lot of money. So that's one example of how this benefit would work for somebody who's going to be eligible for a spousal benefit. So let's talk next about how it would work if you're eligible for a survivor benefit. So our next example will be Sarah. Let's say Sarah's 75. She's also a retired Connecticut teacher. She was a middle school teacher, and she's receiving a Connecticut teacher's pension of $4,500 per month. Her husband, John, died 2 years ago at 70, and he was receiving $2,900 per month at the time that he died. So due to the government pension offset, Sarah was not eligible for any of John's Social Security benefit because her pension was so large that it wasn't qualifying her to receive any of John's Social Security benefit, and due to the government pension offset. So without the government pension offset, if let's say Sarah worked for IBM and she was getting a pension of $4,500, she would then be eligible for a survivor benefit of $2,900, assuming John's benefit was greater than hers. Maybe she was only going to get $1,500 a month, but John's getting $2,900. She could take over the $2,900 benefit. Well, in this case, she was getting zero. And assuming that Sarah also was somebody who only taught for her career, she didn't have any other work history, she's not eligible for her own benefit, so she was getting $0 from Social Security. Now, thanks to the elimination of the government pension offset due to the Social Security Fairness Act, Sarah is going to be eligible for a full Social Security survivor benefit of John's benefit, which is $2,900 per month. That's a significant amount of money. So as I mentioned earlier with Judy, with Sarah, she's going to get a payment starting sometime soon of $2,900 a month. Plus, she's going to get a retroactive payment going back all the way to January 1st of last year. So it's a significant amount of money for somebody in this situation who had a pension or has a pension that is exempt from Social Security wages. They're getting that, and they weren't eligible for a survivor Social Security benefit, and their spouse passed away recently or even a number of years ago. So this is a win for Sarah. So just imagine that in this situation, Sarah and John really didn't have a lot of other savings. They were kind of struggling financially to pay their bills because Connecticut's it's an expensive state to retire in. And then they lost John's Social Security income. So really put them in a difficult position. Well, luckily now, someone in this situation like Sarah will be eligible for that full Social Security survivor benefit, which could be a great windfall and a big help in this situation. So the last example I'd talk about would be somebody who's single. Let's say Jane is 68. She's also a retired Connecticut teacher. She taught high school for 30 years, and she's getting a pension of $3,500 a month. And she had some part-time jobs before teaching. and her Social Security statement showed that she'd get $1,000 a month at her full retirement. However, due to something called the windfall elimination provision, there's a reduction in your own benefit that is based on how many years that you paid into Social Security. So teaching in Connecticut is exempt, so that doesn't count. So it would really be other jobs. So because she had less than 30 years of paying into Social Security, she has a maximum reduction of $587. So instead of getting $1,000, Sarah's been getting $413 a month because she was getting that maximum WEP reduction. Well, the good news, I said Sarah, but I should have said Jane. The good news for Jane is that $1,000 that she should have gotten is what she's going to start getting sometime soon, because that WEP, windfall elimination provision reduction, will be going away. And she'll also get a retroactive check. So those are 3 examples of how this elimination could drastically impact you. So what do you need to do? Well, if you haven't previously filed for Social Security, you need to do so. So somebody like Sarah, who never filed because maybe she thought she was never eligible for it, needs to make sure that she does that. You can do this by going online to ssa.gov.myaccount. You can call the Social Security office at 1-800-772-1213, or you can visit a local office. But the point is that you need to file an application so that they know you're eligible for this money so that you can start receiving it. And as I read in the press release, more complicated cases could take longer, but hopefully if you file for your benefits, you'll start getting them soon. So the last thing I want to talk about is just how is Social Security taxed? And I've talked about this before in episode 217 if you want to go back and listen to that. But the point is that currently right now, based off your income for the year, it determines how much of your Social Security benefit is taxable. For some people, it's 0. And the way that calculation is done, you take half of your Social Security benefit plus your other earned income for the year, IRA distributions, dividends, interest, any other earnings that you have, plus any non-taxable interest, so any tax-free bond income that you get. And depending on that number and whether you're single or married, it determines how much of your Social Security benefit is taxable. So if you're single and you do this calculation and it comes out to less than $25,000, none of your benefits taxable. If you're married filing jointly and that number is less than $32,000, then none of your benefit is taxable. If it's over that, up to $34,000 for a single filer and $44,000 for a married joint filer, half of your Social Security benefit is included in your taxable income. So you don't pay 50% tax, it just half of it gets reported on your income to determine the state and federal tax that you owe. Once you go over $44,000 and $34,000 as a single filer or $44,000 as a joint filer, then all 85% of your benefit gets reported on your taxable income. So this means that there are some people that are not paying any tax on their Social Security wages, but there are a lot of people that are. So this is something that President Trump has campaigned about. I talked about this in this episode that I didn't think it was going to happen. I was not a believer that Social Security would potentially become tax-free for everyone. It really is crazy that it is taxable because you're already paying taxes on this money and then you pay tax on it again. But anyway, it just seems like a difficult thing long-term to be able to sustain Social Security because it already has problems, the system that is. But this is something that is getting closer to being law because Congress passed a budget resolution just last week that would, part of which makes Social Security benefits not taxable. So we'll have to stay tuned to see what happens. But if you are getting this windfall of money and now you're starting to get more Social Security benefits, make sure you stay on top of this issue and talk to your accountant, talk to your financial advisor, figure out if Social Security benefits don't become tax-free, how much tax you might owe on them, to make sure you're either withholding the money on the Social Security benefits through filling out the Social Security withholding form, or you're increasing your estimated tax payments to make sure that you're not going to owe a penalty, or just setting the money aside to know that you might have to pay it in taxes. So I hope this episode was helpful, and definitely if you're eligible for increased Social Security benefits due to the Social Security Fairness Act, make sure that you reach out to Social Security and you file for those benefits. If you have any comments about this, as far as how this has impacted you, maybe what you're seeing as far as an increased benefit, how this is helping you, feel free to leave those comments below as well. Have a great week. And as always, if you have a listener question, you can leave it at retirewithryan.com. Talk to you soon. Take care.